Hi.
Hi, Sue.
Hey, Sue.
All right, let's get started.
Hi. Hello.
Can
Good
you
evening.
hear us?
Yeah, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All
We're
right.
good.
Good evening, everybody. This is the September 28th, 2023 meeting of the Needham Conservation Commission. I'm Dave Harrer, Commission Chair. Before we get started, I'm going to confirm that all members and staff are present and can hear me. When I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Sue,
Yes.
Reed,
Yeah, present.
Fred,
Yes, I'm here.
Peter,
Here.
Allison. All right, no Allison. Paulina. Said Paulina might be late. Okay.
Yeah,
And Deb
here.
and Clay.
Here.
Okay. This open meeting of the Town of Needham Conservation Commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Healy's March 2023 extension of the open meeting law temporary provisions. All supporting materials have been provided to members of the commission and are available on the Conservation Commission website. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Before we go to the first item on the agenda, let's cover a few ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each hearing on the agenda and then introduce the applicant and/or their consultant to begin their project presentation. After conclusion of the applicant's presentation, I will call on each commission member to provide their comments or questions. Please hold until your name is called. After comments or questions from the commission members, I will solicit questions and comments from staff and then from the public. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you, and please state your name before speaking. Finally, each vote taken during this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. Okay. The first item is minutes. I don't think we have any minutes this week. Is that correct?
Correct. We received one set of draft minutes, but they were received just a day or two ago. I didn't have time to circulate those yet for review.
Yeah, okay. Do you have any enforcement or violation comments, issues?
There's one enforcement that will be coming before us for review as a follow-up. They've supposedly completed their restoration plan as required by the enforcement. That was for 1297 Central Avenue. I haven't completed the staff review. I was out on site and I took photos of their plantings, but I have to go through our previous minutes and make sure that everything has been satisfied before I bring it back before you. So I anticipate next meeting on the 12th, the applicant for that will be present.
Okay, so there are a couple hearings that we want to continue. Sabrina,
Right. So Sabrina Lake, I mentioned that I was going to be working with the agent from Wellesley to kind of draft our orders of conditions with similar conditions. So next Tuesday, I'm meeting over in Wellesley with their agent and the consultant for the applicant, Paul McManus. So we're going to kind of go through the notice of intent and discuss what we're looking at for conditions. And so they are requesting a continuance to the October 12th meeting. And, I'll try to have a draft then, depending on how our conversation goes.
okay, that's great. So can I have a motion to continue the hearing for Sabrina Lake Nuisance Aquatic Vegetation Management DEP file 234-912?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, so let's vote. Sue,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Fred,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Allison. I guess she didn't come.
Yeah, she just sent an email that she'll be joining.
Later. Okay. Paulina is not here.
Here, I'm here.
Oh, you are. Okay. Hi. Okay, and the chair votes yes, so that hearing is continued. So there's another hearing, the golf course, 49 Green Street.
Right, so since we, at the meeting they did attend, we let them know about the 2-to-1 tree replacement policy. So I guess they've been working on their tree removal and replacement plan. And they have requested a continuance to the October 26th meeting.
Okay. So can I have a motion to continue 49 Green Street, DEP file number 234-911 to October 26th?
Motion to continue.
Second.
Okay, let's vote Sue,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Fred,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Allison,
Aye.
and Paulina.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is 1380 Central Avenue, the Claxon Field project, DEP file 234-9. I guess they don't have a complete file number yet. Notice of intent, and there's quite a few people here representing that project. I don't know who wants to kick off your presentation, but the floor is yours.
Great. Thanks so much, folks, commissioner members. Great to be here this evening. I'm Brandon Kunkel. I'm the project manager with Weston and Sampson. With me tonight, I have Lee Koska, who's an environmental engineer working on the project, as well as Cassie Bethany, who has really been the point person and day-to-day person pushing this project forward on behalf of the town. I also, for the town, I see Stacy Mulroy, the recreation director. I believe Ed Olson is also on this meeting, and there may be a few others that I'm not able to see at this time. But we understand this is an important project for the town. It's been a project in the making for quite a bit of time. Weston and Sampson was engaged in 2021. And initially the project was started out as really a field refurbishment to make some adjustments to the grading to ensure positive drainage, to really surficial type improvements to bring them up.
In progress.
I think, thank you. Are we good? There's a,
Yeah, I think everybody should go on mute if you can.
is that better? Yes. And folks can hear me with the thumbs up? All right, great. Thank you. So as I was saying, this project started with Weston and Sampson in 2021, and it was really intended to be a field improvements project, minor field drainage improvements, amending the soils, rebuilding the infields, some dugouts, really relatively minor, all staying within the original footprint. We were considering upgrading the light poles and foundations at the time, relocating them for optimum lighting. And that's when things really started to get interesting. When we were doing some subsurface borings, we encountered some materials that were indicative of some contamination, and we'll talk about that momentarily. And then ultimately, that's why Lee Koska is on this call tonight as the environmental engineer leading the remediation efforts, which we'll get into much more detail on. So next slide. Thank you. So as it was noted earlier, this is Claxon Field along Central Ave. Here's just a locus map with it located within the limits of the town. I'm hoping most folks are already familiar with it. But if you're not, happy to give a little bit more information on it. We'll move over to the aerial map, just a little bit more detail in particular. So this is the field as it is today. And we are staying within the limits of the field itself for the most part. There is going to be some improvements at the edge, particularly related to the capping of the project area, which Lee will speak to momentarily. But overall, the project scope is intended to remain the same. The fields are going to stay in their same location. We are going to do some superficial improvements to the parking lot. We'll be adding a perimeter walking path, and then making field improvements with regards to soil amendments, drainage, irrigation, dugouts, and field-related amenities. The light poles are going to stay. We are going to use the existing poles and foundations in place, but we will be modifying the light fixtures themselves. Next slide. Little site history. So Claxton Field, located at 1380 Central Ave in Needham, as it's been pointed out a few times now. Prior to it being recreation fields, it was historically a burn dump site prior to the development of the Needham Recycling and Transfer Station in the 50s and 60s. A little bit before my time, but not much. Following, as I had noted, we were doing some superficial testing out there and found some suspect materials. Lee was brought in to evaluate them and test them. So we did do some analytical testing early on. And then that opened up a release tracking number with DEP, which Lee will be speaking to in much more detail. Next slide. So as I gave in a high level view, the goal of the proposed project is to provide athletic fields that meet the requirements and protect the human health, safety, and the surrounding environment. In addition to the contamination concerns, we are making some grading revisions, as I noted, with regards to drainage and slopes of the fields themselves. The soils are poor draining, so we'll be amending them to get better surface infiltration and drainage, and then just safety of the playing surface being uneven. And this is really all related to the history of the site, and the poor soil conditions further down, settlement, what you would all expect that would come with a burn dump as a previous use. Next slide. So this project does propose 2 different types of barriers, and I'm going to kindly gently step back and let Lee take over a bit, because this is really his area of expertise.
Okay. Thank you so much, Brandon. So again, my name's Lee Koska. I'm a professional engineer with Weston & Sampson, who's managing kind of everything environmental remediation related for this project. So just to expound a little bit on what Brandon already indicated, earlier this year, we did some analytical testing of the waste materials that are under the field. And what we found were contaminants that are typically associated with ash and old solid waste burn dumps, similar to this one. These contaminants were in excess of regulatory criteria, so they did trigger notification to Mass DEP. As such, the site's entered the Massachusetts Contingency Plan, 310 CMR 40. And future work at the site will be performed under the regulatory requirements of that program. So in addition to the field improvements that Brandon's touched on, we are also looking to achieve what's called a condition of no significant risk under the Massachusetts Contingency Plan, which ultimately sets the site up for closure with Mass DEP. To achieve this, we are proposing to cap the existing burn dump with two separate barriers, a geotextile, which is going over the athletic fields and basically the main portions of the park. Within the slopes to the south and west of the park, as well as around select trees, we're proposing a geogrid. That material will provide some additional slope stability and also gives us a little more wiggle room in protecting key trees that I'll discuss later on in the presentation. In addition to this, we will ultimately be replacing the natural turf surface of the field. So the kind of surface condition, though improved, will still be natural grass at the end of this. Next slide, please. So in terms of impacts to the wetland resource areas, we have approximately 93,000 square feet of impacts to the riverfront area. Immediately to the south of the existing field, there's a drop off of about 8 feet down to an existing stream or creek. The limits of the waste associated with the burn dump follow down this slope and end more or less right at the edge of the creek. So as part of this project, we are required to ultimately remediate these materials, which take us right up to the edge of the surface water. So I think that's good for this slide. The one thing I will note is that this is a redevelopment project. Obviously, this land has been significantly disturbed with the presence of the historic burn dump. And as such, we are complying with the Massachusetts stormwater regulations to the greatest extent possible, which I'll touch on in a future slide. Next slide.
Can I just ask, was this a known dump? Like, were you looking for it or?
There was anecdotal evidence, but this site predates any solid waste regulations. There were no real documents on file. Basically, it was just word of mouth from
Okay.
town employees from back in the day. So it was not previously a listed site under the Mass Solid Waste regs, nor prior to this project was there a release tracking number or an MCP site associated with it.
Okay, thanks.
So in terms of the local bylaw waivers, we obviously have to encroach within the buffer zone and within 25 feet of the surface water. So this work is required under the Massachusetts contingency plan. As per Article 6 of the town bylaws, there is the potential for a waiver granted for MCP response actions. This would fall under that category because ultimately disturbance of the resource areas would be required to comply with the requirements of 310 CMR 40, the MCP. Another thing that I will note is the existing buffer zone is forested, but the trees have literally grown out of the waste materials. The waste has been there for so long that a number of trees have grown up through it. As such, to comply with the requirements of the MCP, we will have some disturbance of these trees and tree removals within the buffer zone. That being said, we've been working with Ed Olson to identify select trees to be retained, which is why we are utilizing the GeoGrid to basically give these trees the best chance of survival through the project and maintain those that we can. Next slide, please.
Well, just real quick on related, and we'll speak in more detail momentarily, just as part of the waivers. We know there's a 2-to-1 tree replacement. We will be taking out a significant amount of trees along the edge. We'll also be taking out invasives as well. Clay was kind enough to join Ed and his team and the Weston and Sampson team when we went out and evaluated the trees to determine which ones we want to make a concerted effort to try and save to the best of our ability, which ones would be optimal to go as it relates to being able to mitigate the solid waste removal as part of the construction process. So definitely a conversation we would like to have at the commission with regards to tree replacement, but we can do that once we get a little bit further along and you guys have some more information. Next slide. Well, so here we go. Tree mitigation. Perfect. So a certain amount of trees are definitely going to have to be removed, definitely unavoidable, just in order to get to removing the waste, whether or not it's with equipment or excavating down to get to the waste to remove it, particularly along within the riverfront in the 25 and 50-foot zones, which is where majority of the trees are, unfortunately. But we are proposing the removal of 43 trees within the commission jurisdiction, and then an additional 27 trees within the park area in order to be able to either put in the geotextile fabric or the geogrid fabric. And we are proposing to at least minimally replace them in kind, as well as in part of the site, and we can go through that in the planting plan shortly, a pollinator garden in lieu of natural grass, particularly in the under some existing tree canopy that will definitely have to be removed. We would like to propose putting back basically a wildflower meadow mix of seed that would encourage habitat and pollinators to have a place to seek refuge. Next slide. So these were the plans that were submitted. I do want to note, since we have submitted, Lee has had conversations with DEP, and DEP has come back and asked for an additional 6 inches of cover within the field, the baseball field area proper. Everything else can be 18 inches as we are currently proposing, but to just ensure the safety of the kids and the users of the fields, they've asked for an additional 6 inches. So we will be adjusting the grading plans. And so we will be back in front of you. Plus, we're also aware that DEP has not issued a number. So we know we weren't going to be able to close tonight anyway, but we wanted to still meet with you folks, have a robust conversation, and be able to address any comments that may come out of this, and then get the revised plans back in front of you folks. So with that, we'll go through this relatively quickly, and we'll talk about where the areas of impact are, and we'll then hand it back to you folks for your questions. Next slide. Existing conditions. Here you can see the 2 infields of the fields that are out there, the existing parking lot to the north of the page, and then really the buffer zones down to the south and the west of the page. Next slide. So this is our total project area going down to the stream bank edge, as Lee mentioned. We did go out there with GPS and located the trees exactly that were to be removed. Those are the black X's along the south page, and then also along Central Ave, and where we will be doing really some pretty heavy duty tree removal and ground clearing, as well as the field removals and the milling and resurfacing of the parking lot as well. Next
Can I ask
slide.
a question?
You bet.
So how did you determine the limits of the fill area? Did you?
So as part of the overall design, we did a number of rounds of subsurface investigations out here. So it was a combination of soil borings, shallow test pits, and also just visual observations of the topography. That included test pits across the stream where we didn't find any waste materials, as well as just along the slope of it. So through all of those, we have a pretty good handle on where the waste ends. One thing I'll just note, you can see on the left side of the figure here, there's a little, I'll call it a jut in. That's a bedrock outcrop, and there are a number of those that abut both that portion of the site as well as the eastern and southern portions. So those areas also give a pretty clear boundary on where the waste ultimately resides. And also Central Ave is the limit of waste going to the north.
Okay, thanks.
Next slide. So here's our proposed improvements plan. You can see there will be, we will be resurfacing the parking lot. We'll also be providing accessible pathways from the parking lot up to the fields and a perimeter walking path around the fields themselves. And then within the limits of the fields, as I noted, we'll be raising the elevations. So in the construction process, we're going to there's about 10 inches of existing topsoil that is not contaminated. It's been tested. It was really ultimately used as a cap as part of the landfill. And then they built the field. So it is a robust layer. We're going to strip that. We're going to stockpile it for reuse because it is clean material. And then we'll be then importing an additional 14 inches of material within the field limits to give us that full 24-inch profile that DEP is requesting. And then on the outside of the field limits, they are okay with only 18 inches of clean material above the demarcation barriers. So in order to put the demarcation barriers, we will be stripping all the topsoil down, having to remove the trees where there are significant trees or trees that Ed would really like to keep. We are going to be using a geogrid, which allows for it's a much more forgiving material when it comes to tree roots, but it does provide a protection. It allows us to keep the roots covered with soil and allows the roots to continue to grow. So that's our approach in trying to protect as many trees as we can. But we do know that there are certain trees that are either in poor health or failing, or perhaps don't provide a native tree, or they were invasive. Those would be coming out as part of the cap preparation, particularly along the stream bank edge. Next slide. This is just our layout plan, so we can just get right past that. So this is the grading plan. In general, we were already lifting the fields up. This is the 18-inch cap that we originally proposed, but we will be modifying this to be a full 24 inches, an additional 6 inches above what you see here. So in general, we are matching the same drainage patterns that are out there currently. We'll be taking the curse off the embankment as part of this. As some of this embankment where it dives down to the stream, it's actually quite steep. Some are 2-to-1, some are even 1-to-1. We'll be easing those back to ensure that when we're going through the reestablishment period, we're minimizing the erosion. We'll be using erosion blankets, straw wattles, silt fences to ensure that all the material stays on site, as well as just mitigating any sort of runoff into the resource areas. Next slide. So this is our planting plan. You can see we are providing quite a bit of robust tree replanting, and the shaded area is will be the conservation or wetland pollinator seed mix, as well as the mitigation of the 74 trees that we want to, or pretty confident we'll have to take out. What we can definitely clarify is to the south, there are still While we showed the trees to be removed, there are still a significant number of trees that will be retained. So while it looks like there are no trees down there, they are down there. I assure you. I can see the small symbols, but it does get lost a bit with the hatching. So if it's helpful, we can help clarify the trees to remain as well. But within the field area, we'll be working with Ed and his team to ensure that the soil mixes are correct and conducive to infiltration and turf growth. And then Ed and his team will obviously have a heavy hand as well in the reestablishment and seed mixes within the field areas. Next slide. These are just some typical erosion details, tree protection details. I'm not sure if you folks want to go through them. We're happy to do it, but we'll have provisions in place for the stockpiling and ensuring that doesn't erode. We'll be protecting that with silt fences and straw wattles. We'll have all the straw wattles and silt fences at the bottom of slopes as well as top of slopes. Erosion control blankets, dust control, construction entrances, and then a robust tree protection, whether or not it's with the wrap of the tree or at the critical root zone. Next slide. These are just some of the field construction details. This will be modified as part of the additional 6 inches. So it'll be a total of 24-inch cap, as I noted earlier, within the field of play area or within the walking perimeter loop, more accurately, because there are some overlay fields in the outfield. So all playing fields will have 24 inches. All general landscape areas or passive landscape areas will have 18 inches, and DEP was okay with that. Next slide. We'll be providing shade for the players, new dugouts, just general amenities, bleachers, concrete pads, etc. Next slide. We will be resurfacing the parking lot, so restriping, traffic arrows, mitigation. We will be providing a new irrigation system out there, highly efficient. We worked with Aqueous Design. They are really great about specializing in water conservation and really tailoring the irrigation systems to minimize overspray, wind loss, evapotranspiration. Next slide. Next slide. We will, as I noted, the existing light poles are going to remain in place for the fields just due to the contaminants with the foundations, but we are going to retrofit the actual light fixtures themselves and then rewire the poles. Next slide. Next slide. This is the irrigation plan. So it will be focused within the field of play area. And then the rest of the natural landscape would just be as it is today, just through Mother Nature and rain, with the water conservation in mind. Next slide. Some irrigation details. Next slide. Next slide. And that will wrap up our presentation.
Yeah, that's great, Brandon. That was a great presentation, very informative. Going to go to the commissioners for their questions and comments. Well, let's start with Sue.
Yeah, it was a great presentation. I see there's a lot involved. One question I have, just so to make it a little more clear for me, what percentage of the buffer zone has contaminated soil?
So we will be impacting, and because it has contaminated soil, about 2 acres. I think it's 93,000 square feet. Is that the reference, Lee, you gave?
Yep, that's correct. And within our limits of work, pretty much everything shown within the limits of the work within the buffer zone is there's waste material underlying it. So it's awfully close to 100%. Yep.
And just a second question, capping materials, when you're gonna cap the contaminated soil, what kind of capping materials do you use?
So we are proposing a Merafi geotextile, and it's a Merafi 380i. It's a pretty robust, non-woven. It's similar to a landscaping fabric, but basically a lot tougher. So there will be that. Then that will be overlain by loam, which is spec'd out by Brian and or Brandon rather, in coordination with Ed, as well as the clean existing topsoil. On the slopes, we'll be using similar loam, but the one change is it's a Propex Armor Max GeoGrid. Basically, it's a similar interwoven mesh that you can't really penetrate with a shovel. The only way you can realistically get through it is if you cut it with a knife. So it provides a sufficient level of protection that if for whatever reason someone were to try to dig down into that slope material, they wouldn't be able to contact the impacted material beneath it.
Thank you.
All right, so Reed, do you have any questions, comments?
Yeah, Fred, I think you had your hand up before, if you want to go ahead for me.
Well, let's just go in order here.
Okay, yeah. Right, yeah, and I'd like to hear what other commissioners have to say, so I'm happy to defer.
All right, Fred, you,
Okay, you made reference to having to remove trees in part so that you could remove the contaminated material. But I thought the decision was not to remove the material, but to simply contain it with these caps. So maybe you could clarify that.
So I think a better word than remove would probably be regrade. To clarify, the material will be kept on site, but in areas where we have those steep one-to-one slopes, the material will basically be pulled back to within the field extents to lessen those slopes so that we have less ongoing erosion issues. And unfortunately, some of the trees fall within those slopes. So to clarify, the material will not be removed from the site for off-site disposal, but it will need to be relocated on site, still beneath the cap, but just to flatten out the slopes and reduce erosion concerns.
Okay, so the trees that need to be removed for moving and managing the contaminants, those trees are along the wetland. And is there a challenge? Is there any reason to remove trees along? There's a fair number of trees to be removed along Central Avenue as well. Is that right?
So the issue with that is that the waste material encroaches all the way up to Central Ave. So ultimately, to maintain that 18 inches of fill that's going to be required, we're air knifing around the trees that we can. But those trees along Central Ave were still ultimately selected for removal because we're going to have to be removing down to get the new replacement material in.
I see. Well, so you're saying that you're not going to excavate the contaminants along Central Avenue. You're simply going to make sure you have. Oh, but you need to put a textile down.
That's right.
Sometimes.
Correct. Yep.
I see.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
all right, good. Peter?
Yeah, so it's 43 trees in total.
Within the jurisdiction, it's
So there's more, you're taking down more trees outside of the jurisdiction, but within the
Yeah.
ones that you have to point out to us.
correct.
I'm sure you've been told this by the office, but the tree removal policy right now that we have requires each tree that's being removed to be identified by species and size, and And I don't see that in this report. So at the very least, I'd like more information about the species of trees. I mean, you reference invasive, so I assume you're talking about Norway maple. Um, what kind of trees are being removed, and what kind of trees are being planted, and what kind of trees are being saved?
Sure. So yeah, it's all the above. And regarding and Ed, please chime in here as well if you feel it's appropriate or speaking out of turn. Some of the trees that were identified removal, which are maples, there's some oaks, I believe, as well. They're either in declining condition or the potential
Can
for
can I actually stop you there? Because Conservation Commission likes dead trees. And so you're saying that these are trees that you don't feel bad removing as part of this process because they don't they don't have value, but we see them as having plenty of value even when they're dead. That's one of the reasons why the 25-foot is a no disturb zone.
Mhm.
So I'd ask you to be careful about characterizing trees as not having value that are in decline and ill health, because if they're within the 25-foot zone, no one's supposed to be in there anyway. So, you know.
Sure. Understood. And it seems like this will be an ongoing conversation. We have to provide you guys with some more information. We do have the trees calipers identified, and we can categorize that in a spreadsheet with the species.
Ed,
So go ahead.
yeah, Ed, you had your hand up. If you wanted to add to what Brandon's saying.
Yes, and to Peter's point, all trees have value. However, a lot of the tree removals are trees of heaven, which are invasive and really do not serve any habitat value. They're actually robbing from habitat value. So there's Norway maple. Again, Norway maple is an invasive species. It has some value, but again, I think part of this tough pill to swallow is that we will be removing Japanese knotweed, a lot of invasives. This wasn't a planted landscape. This was a landscape that sprung up through old burn dump soils. So none of these trees were planted. This is Mother Nature's way to reforest. So, you know, it's interesting. Not to give you the history, but this was an open burn site. My neighbor in Needham, and God bless him, rest his soul, Tony Cefalo, who lived behind me for all my years in Needham with my family, actually built this field. And he told me how he built this field. He built it with imported topsoil and a D8. And he pushed it out and basically shaped it and did the best he could. But that was 65 years ago. And Mother Nature has basically populated a lot of the edge, as Clay, Peter, as anyone can see if they walk into some of those areas, with a hot mess of invasives right now. So a lot of the tree removals, and I understand Peter's point, but we do want to be mindful that a lot of these invasives have no value at all to us. In fact, they're robbing that property from other values. So I think as we spoke about, we'll break down a lot of the invasives in that total so that people can see that, again, a lot of these tree removals were based upon reasons other than just trying to cap the former landfill. Speaking to that, we all want to save trees, but again, as we strip topsoil away from this area and have to put the geotextile fabric topsoil back on top and then additional topsoil, a lot of trees will be smothered and killed through that process. So we do have to walk a fine line to understand that we don't just want to save trees and have them die 2 years later. We'd rather remove them with the permission of the conservation and then try to repopulate with more desirable species, as well as create a safe haven for wildlife habitat on that southwestern edge where was noted the pollinated gardens and some native species that would be and maybe hopefully serve as an area that we can educate the public about why we chose those, what we're trying to accomplish, and the reasons behind that. So I just wanted to make the note that, again, a lot of the tree removals are Ailanthus, and really are trees that nobody wants in their landscape. Thank you.
All right, thanks. And Clay, you had something you want to add to this discussion?
Yeah, I will reserve kind of the bulk of my staff comments for when you're ready for that after the commission has discussed everything. But I figured I would just chime in based on the tree removals. I was out there the day with Eddie, a couple of his arborists, as well as Weston Sampson, when we were identifying which trees were going to be requested to be removed and locating all the trees through the GPS measures. And I just wanted to I guess point out when we were on site, that was the kind of recurring discussion that we continued to have was how to best lay down this geotextile. I did reiterate the concerns of the commission, both about habitat value, wildlife snags, trying to keep whatever we could that's standing. And I think that the point that the town is trying to kind of bring up is that a lot of the ability to simply cut a snag on a dying tree may not be as feasible in this case because they are trying to cap what's underneath those trees. So we did discuss the methods for how to preserve those critical root zones underneath the trees that we identified. And when I was walking through with Ed and his other arborists, we were really trying to identify which trees were healthy enough and robust enough to potentially survive that cutting process around that critical root zone, because there was definitely some trees that we would have liked to have saved, but they were either their growth structure and or their current health and what decline there was really didn't seem feasible. Once you cut into that the outer edge of that critical root zone, it was unlikely to really stay alive. And so one of the discussions that we had, and I'll add this kind of my staff comments when you're ready for those, but we did discuss kind of habitat restoration as part of the reclaiming process. So I'd be happy to speak on that after the commission members have all kind of had their questions.
Great, thank you. Peter, do you have any other comments?
No, I mean, just the information that Ed was able to provide makes me feel a little bit differently about the removal of many of them, because if it's tree of heaven, yeah, I get it for sure. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing a more detailed list of the trees, both the trees that are being saved and the trees that are being removed.
Okay, no
Right,
trouble.
great. Speaking of trees now, I'll ask our tree expert, Allison. She has any comments, questions?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, good. I think that I had two questions and one comment, and I think that Clay sort of answered some of the trees that you want to save. You can't obviously put 18 inches of soil on top of them, but but there are ways you can put like some fill.
Mhm.
If you have some, like even some air pipes and use sand and then I was also a little bit concerned about the permittivity of the what you're putting on, the cap, that fabric, that over time, if it fills up with silt or something, that it might affect the drainage over time. So that might kind of inform species that you might propose. So then the other comment was, you're removing 43 trees. Why aren't you planting 86? And you don't have to answer it the second, but that's like 2 to 1. And my comment also in terms of the species of the planting plan was because you're planting a lot of trees. I would like to see a little bit more diversity than 3 species. I'd like to see maybe a couple of evergreens, maybe some understory trees, and species not even, but some. And the other thing is that I absolutely love and adore sugar maple, but you cannot plant sugar maple. They are dying everywhere and have been for 20 years, 25 years. So if you want to plant a sugar maple it's not a native, it's a cross. The Green Mountain is a cross with the black maple from Kansas. It has a much more leathery leaf. It is not native, but it looks like a sugar maple. That's something that maybe the commission might, and you all designers might think of. The other thing is you might think about planting a pin oak, and not having, a maple that's a cross, because it's not native and that's not really our policy. And just, adding just a few more species to get a little more diversity. because there's a lot of trees you're planting. You have the ability, if there were only 5 trees, I wouldn't say that comment. But,
Sure.
So it'd just be nice to have, on the edges and, kind of have that layering a little bit. And maybe even some shrubs as well. I mean, if you don't want to plant the full 86, maybe you have some shrubs, like taller shrubs, like winterberry or, don't just think of grasses and forbs as wildlife value. Think of shrubs like winterberry.
Yep.
As
Great.
having an berry and other things, that having a wildlife value. That's it.
Great point. Thank you.
You had your hand up? Or was that from before?
No, I just wanted to mention that, on one of the slides, it showed some of the tree removals. Some of those are the trees that we've planted in my 13 years in the front by the Claxton Rock. And again, we debated, do we work around them? And I think, again, the construction, the peeling back of topsoil is going to really kill those trees, damage them. So we had talked about potentially trying to put some spading in this contract where we're going to remove some of those valuable trees, and not just remove them, we're going to move them to other properties in town, much like we have with pretty much every large scale capital project that we've had approved, where we don't just cut trees down. We'll go get a 94-inch spade and we'll actually try to peel back as many usable species to either bring to our nursery or to bring to other town properties, much like we have on pretty much every job that I've been the project manager on. So, so that is part of the plan moving forward. So we talk in removal, but really it's removal and maybe moving some of these trees as well. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Let's go with Paulina. Any questions, comments?
I do. I might have missed it, but I'm assuming that the topsoil that you're going to be removing it off site, or are you reusing it or capping it? What are you
We're
doing with it?
reusing it. So the topsoil that is there currently is clean topsoil. It's been tested. It's, as Ed gave in his history lesson, it was imported, put atop of the burn dump. We've tested it. It has come back clean. The dirtier materials are below that. So we are planning to reuse it as mostly a cost-saving measure, but also because it is good material still.
My only concern with that is when you mentioned that there were invasive species like knotweed, and if they're growing in that topsoil and you're going to reuse it, you're just now spreading the invasive plants all over. So is there a way?
So
I don't know what the rest of the commission
yeah, so
thinks,
good
but
question. Yeah, so there will be, while we are planning to keep the material on site for cost issues or cost reasons, and it's okay to do that, we will be scraping down one to remove the turf itself, as well as the forest floor, in order to be able to get this liner in. So there will be a certain amount of, whether or not it's stump removal or root removal, just general invasive removal, there will be material that has to go off site and managed accordingly, but we are looking to keep as much actual soil material on site as possible.
yeah, because I think my understanding with like the Japanese knotweed is even, you can remove the plant and most of the root balls, but if you just leave like a little bit of roots, it'll just spring right back up. So I don't know.
Spontaneously.
It's almost like in those areas you might need to remove that topsoil and just bring in clean fill or something. I don't know what the rest of the commission thinks about it. But my other comment was, I know you said there's a lot of invasive plants or invasive trees, and there's some that are just dead, possibly dead trees that are standing. I don't know if we could, as part of their mitigation, they could just use some of those some of those snags and just lay them down and create habitat that way. Just set them aside if they don't have any invasive vines on them or anything, and then put them near the wetlands.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely. Yep.
Up for people's discussion, but
Good idea.
Okay, Reed, we skipped over you. Do you have any?
Yeah, I just yeah, to Allison's point, and I don't know how other commissioners feel about that, but I do think that, the addition of some native shrubs, especially to that, around that pollinator area would be a nice complement to that pollinator area, to make up that difference. Yeah, and then also to Polina's point about reusing some of those snags, I think that would be, very beneficial.
Good. Sue, you had a follow-up comment?
Yeah, just a quick question. This is solid waste. There's no hazardous waste involved.
So it falls under both lines, and I won't get into all of the details on the distinction between those two, but they aren't mutually exclusive. Ultimately, hazardous waste is a very specific definition under federal regulations. We won't go into all the details, but this is a mixture of ash and solid waste material that does contain contamination, heavy metals, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which are typical for ash, as well as dioxides, which are typical for partially burned waste material. So it does contain contamination in excess of mass DEP thresholds, which is why it needs to be capped. But ultimately, the source of that contamination was this old solid waste that was put down up till the 50s, 60s and burned intermittently.
Okay.
All right, I just have a few questions. The path that is encircling the fields, I can't remember what the construction of that is. Is that paved or is it?
Paved. It'll be an asphalt sidewalk.
Is there any reason why that couldn't be, permeable?
I'm sorry?
Is there any reason why that couldn't be permeable, like, crushed stone or?
I think just from a long-term maintenance and accessibility perspective, we wanted something a little more solid. I'm sure, we can go back and revisit that if that's something that the commission is feeling strongly about. But it was really just a product of maintenance and longevity from, just being able to provide an accessible route over, following storms and washouts. Obviously, yes, stone dust can be compacted, but yeah, I think we could all agree after summer's weather like this year, washouts are more prevalent with that type of material. And then someone's got to be able to get back out there relatively quickly and put it back. So
I could add one thing on that from a MCP perspective. Ultimately, this park will be subject to maintenance and monitoring in perpetuity. So having a robust material that's less likely to degrade and ultimately require, repeated repairs from an MCP perspective is preferred.
Okay. My second question is, when you skin off the 6 inches of topsoil, how are you going to know whether you're going too far down? Or it seems to be pretty delicate procedure. I'm sure you have thought that out, right?
That's why Lee's here.
So a few notes on that. We've done numerous borings and test pits now, and pretty continuously across the park. We have a minimum of 10 inches. But as part of this, the work will be overseen by our office and an LSP. Part of that will be us having a constant on-site presence during this earthwork to confirm that we aren't clipping into the waste materials. It may involve additional sampling, that remains to be seen, but at a bare minimum, the work is covered under what's called a release abatement measure plan, a RAM plan, which needs to get submitted to DEP and stamped by an LSP. And as part of that, there will be oversight by my office for all earthwork, capping, and related activities to, provide an additional set of eyes to make sure that we aren't clipping into the waste and, ultimately reusing material that we shouldn't be.
Right. Okay. Now my final question is, has anybody sampled the groundwater or any of the water in the stream? And I know a lot of the contaminants are, pretty stable in the soil. So I was just wondering what showed, if anything.
Yep, so we have installed 4 monitoring wells within the actual limits of waste, which represent worst case scenario. We have 1 round of groundwater data back, and the only thing that we've seen is elevated zinc, which we believe is associated with suspended sediment that didn't get filtered out of the samples. So we will be going out and doing additional groundwater sampling as part of the ongoing MCP response actions. But in general, other than those 2 zinc hits in 2 wells, the groundwater looked relatively good. It was below applicable standards, which includes what's called a GW3 standard. That's meant to be protective of surface water bodies and is basically, a low number that if that material or if that groundwater were to ultimately make it to the surface water bodies, it's below any thresholds that would cause impacts to aquatic life.
Right, great. So now I'll ask Deb and Clay if they have any comments.
Yeah, so as mentioned, I was out on the site when we were GPSing the trees and reviewing the tree health. Some of the discussions I had with the applicant at that time had to do with, tree preservation. Invasive species came up several times. Invasive species on the site included not just tree of heaven and knotweed, but also garlic mustard and bittersweet. So I think that any replanting measurements should include at minimum a period of invasive species monitoring for whatever growth monitoring we do, if it's 2 years on the replantings. And then even beyond, I think there's some interdepartmental cooperation, being a town property, for us to continue to try to snag, especially kind of first alert as we're establishing. The other thing that we talked about a bit was with preserving a couple of the trees, especially on the eastern portion of the site closest to the river, where we're able to save those trees, assuming that they do endure this process and continue to thrive. I think in your consideration as a commission, like as a board, there's going to be a certain amount of tree canopy that's preserved. So it's not a total daylighting in all of the areas being done. So in discussion with the applicant, not only did we recommend trying to get some more of the pollinator initiative that we've been doing, but also I think that there's room there to be establishing an understory as well, either through shrubs or understory trees. I think that it's a prime example for us to create not just pollinator habitat, but also edge habitat. There's not often large projects like this that give a substantial length of area for us to establish that kind of habitat. And similar to what we did over with Walker Pond, I think that there's an opportunity for educational signage. The town did put up information on the pollinators and stormwater around the plantings we did at Walker Pond. And I think there's even more opportunity to be doing some of that here, both in habitat and edge habitat that you might find, wildlife you see in Needham, as well as again the awareness of things like stormwater management and the crossover with having healthy soils and a pollinator habitat. Especially with this accessible walkway, you could almost have a series of signs, and I think getting some kind of commitment on that educational aspect, in my opinion, could maybe play in favor of some of that tree replacement process that if we're looking just at 2-to-1 tree replacements, I think if we're a little bit more open-minded, we can really try to get a comprehensive wildlife kind of restoration in that area, and also provide a service that educates people on some of the things the commission is involved with and is interested with from an environmental aspect. Aside from that, I believe this project did receive a DEP file number just today, but there have not been any comments yet from DEP. Originally, when I was walking through this project with them, I thought it was going to be filed as a limited project under those riverfront standards. I thought that it wasn't going to be able to meet them, but then after they submitted and relooking, it does, in my opinion, also meet the degraded category as a previous landfill. And I think that I would just like confirmation that either DEP confirms that, or at least that they're not issuing any additional comments that might result in an appeal under the highly scrutinized riverfront standards, since they have had their eyes on that. So I think by next meeting, if we haven't heard anything, that's a good sign. And if needed, we can also reach out to DEP just to see if they have an intention, the wetland side of DEP. I'm sure that the applicant's been in plenty contact with the CMP side of DEP. So those are my comments, and I see that Fred has also raised his hand.
Yeah, Fred, do you want a follow-up question?
Well, do you want to check with Deb before I
Oh,
go?
Do you want to comment on what?
Yeah, well, okay, I was gonna, I'll say that there is the potential for doing something quite beautiful here. I mean, I know there's gonna be a lot of destruction as well, but because of the size of it and the proximity to the wetland, it occurred to me that if you made the walkway around the perimeter bordered on the inside by wildflowers and on the outside by shrubbery or something a little more understory, that it might be even a more attractive walking experience, because you'd be sort of immersed a little bit more in the nature. Now, I don't know whether you could sacrifice a little bit of that, more of that lawn to do something like that, but that was just an idea that I had.
Right, great. Yeah, do you have anything to add? Any comments?
No, not right now. Clay has been really involved in this project, so
Yeah, you put some good ideas out there.
yeah.
If I could, and I do appreciate, the thoughtfulness with regards to restoration and creating habitat. We just need to be very strategic about what types of plants we can plant, only because, and Lee can speak to this, DEP is very sensitive about impacting the barrier, and particularly with roots, and the reason that should a plant get blown over if it's a larger size plant or has a invasive root system and it impacts the barrier, that's going to really be a non-starter for DEP solid waste. So it's been done before, and there are strategies. We just need to be very careful about the plant types.
Great. So Clay, is there anybody in the public audience that has their hand up?
Just before I do that, I did see that Allison has raised her
Yep.
hand as well.
Yeah, Allison, do you?
Yes, I'm working on a big landfill project in Lynn, a park, and working with Charter, and in terms of DEP and discussion about penetration of barriers, that it's mostly tap-rooted trees.
Yep.
And none of the trees that you've proposed or that I mentioned are taprooted.
No, you're right. I
don't think it's going to be a problem with what we've been talking about. We're not going to be planting, white oaks and
no, I agree. I just wanted to.
Yes, you know what I mean. Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify that, not to worry about red oak and maples and things like that. Okay.
The one distinction, if I could, this, despite it being an old burn dump, actually falls under the Bureau of Waste Site Cleanup arm of DEP, which operate under slightly different regulations than the folks over at the Lynn landfill. I'm very familiar with that project and the folks over at Charter. So ultimately, they're very similar programs with similar capping requirements, but it is a separate arm of DEP with its own set of regulations that do have some distinction between them. But absolutely noted. The real concern we would have would be any of those species with more aggressive root systems that would penetrate the liner, and there are definitely options that kind of best meet both sides requirements here. So happy to look into those further.
Okay, great. So Clay, is there anybody in the public arena that wants to comment?
There are no hands raised.
Does
Okay,
Diane have her hand raised, or is that? Oh no, that's my own. That's my own hand. Sorry,
right.
it's been a long day.
All right, so seeing that there's no further comments, I think that the applicant has some homework to do. And we'll update the plans with the increased fill. We've talked about some ideas of plantings and whatever. So looking forward to your next submittal. And do we have projected date for that, or do you want to leave that open now?
I guess if, just so I can understand, Clay, you'll be issuing formal comments, is that correct?
I can certainly, I can certainly forward the comments that were discussed tonight. I have everything written down. The recording is, we will also have a recording of the meeting as well that we can refer back
Okay.
to. So,
I mean, ideally, yeah, I think we want to keep this going for the town and keep the project moving forward. It is an important project. Ideally, we are breaking ground this spring, following some financial requests from the town side. So we want to make sure we're well positioned to be able to go out to bid and commence construction. So.
All right, so do you want to continue this to the next meeting, which is the 12th, or the next one?
At this point, yes, and if we have to continue or defer.
All right, so can
So
I
the revised materials, we need a week ahead, so the commission has time to review.
Yep, understood. Thank you, Deb.
Yep.
All right, so can I have a motion to continue this hearing until the next meeting, October 12th? And this is for the 1380 Central Avenue, Claxon Field, DEP file 234, and I don't know what the other numbers are, but I guess it doesn't matter now. So I can have a
So
motion?
moved.
Second.
All right, so let's vote here. Sue,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Allison,
Aye.
Alina,
Aye.
and I chair votes aye. So thank you for the great presentation, and we look forward to talking with you again.
Great. Thanks so much, all. Have a nice evening.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. The next item on the agenda is 80 Robinwood Avenue. NGWP number 20.
Right, so this is just under our bylaw. It's an
Okay.
isolated wetland.
And this is a notice of intent. And who was here to speak?
Good evening, commission members. I'm Rich Kirby from LEC Environmental.
Hi, Rich.
Hi. With me tonight is the property owner and applicant, Rob Pettit. And Sandra. Thank you. I see you both there. So we filed this notice of intent as Rob and Sandra want to add some second story living space to their existing dwelling at 80 Robinwood Avenue. And if I could share my screen, I'll go through the application. Just have to find it here. Lots of windows open. There we go. So this is a view of their house from Robinwood Avenue. The site is located southwest of High Rock Street and north of the Needham Town Forest within the south central portion of town. Residential development occurs to the northwest and south, and of course the town forest is located to the east. The commission may recall in 2020, LEC filed a notice of intent application for 74 and 80 Robinwood Avenue to alleviate some flooding in the backyard. All that work was implemented and it's working reasonably well. And in the back of this lot, there's an isolated vegetated wetland, which is pretty small. And I have a photograph of it that we included in the notice of intent right here. So this is looking south, really from from 74 Robinwood Avenue. And then this is the isolated wetland in this zone for scale, and my soil auger is right here. So I will scroll down to the plan that we included in the application. Let me zoom out here. So this is the plan. You can see here's Robinwood Avenue. This is the paved driveway that provides access to the existing garage, which is outlined here in red. And then behind the house, we have the lawn area, which has the relatively small isolated wetland, and the balance of the property is wooded. So what they'd like to do is add a second-story addition to a portion of the existing house, which has the red crosshatch here, and then
Actually,
demolish.
Sorry, Rich, just to clarify, that's purely interior renovation on that plan.
Okay, good to know. All right, so that's all interior renovation there. The major component of the project is to demolish and reconstruct the two-car garage with living space above, and that's the gray outline area here. We have a small pad proposed behind the building, behind the garage for AC units and a generator. You can see the proposed garage measures 46.5 feet from the IVW at its closest point. The pad would measure 45.7 feet at its closest point. There's really no site grading proposed as part of this. Everything will be constructed more or less at existing grade. There are two trees that will need to be, well, one of them will need to be removed. The other one will likely need to be removed. And I get into this in the application. Behind the existing garage, there's a landscape hemlock. Rob indicated that that's in pretty rough shape due to the woolly adelgid blight. And then there is another maple tree right on the property line between this house and the house next door. And that's actually visible on the first photograph that I shared with you. It's actually this maple tree right here. Also likely planted as a landscape plant when the neighborhood was built. So at a minimum, that tree would need to be pruned in order to accommodate the proposed development. But because they'll be excavating a frost wall foundation for the garage, the root systems will probably be impacted. That coupled with the proximity of the tree to not only the Pettit's house, but also the house next door, in all likelihood, that tree would need to be removed. So we're asking permission to remove both trees, and maybe we can save the maple, but probably not. So that's why we're asking permission to remove it. I think that covers everything. Relatively straightforward project. The increase in impervious area is just under 300 square feet. We're well under the 25 square foot threshold for stormwater management. And with that, I'd be happy to turn it back to the commission. Oh, and one last thing, sorry, we do have erosion controls proposed. You can see the erosion control boundary proposed right in the backyard there. So with that, I would turn it back to the Conservation Commission.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Rich. So I'll go to the commissioners for comments and questions. Sue?
No comment now.
Reed?
Yeah, so in terms of the tree removal, so I guess those would be replaced, and is there a plan for where the replacement trees would be put?
Sure. So I talked with Rob about this, and we'd be more than open to a special condition requiring the requisite number of replacement trees, and we could put those right in the wetland. I plant them in the IVW, which I think they will have the most function and value.
Okay.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I think I'd probably like some more information on that, but that'd be great. Thanks.
Greg?
Yes, just to continue with Reed's comments, perhaps the next information could include the species and the locations for the replacement trees.
Sure. Does the Conservation Commission typically require a 1-to-1 ratio? So if you remove 2 trees, you replace with 2 trees?
2 to 1.
2 to 1. Okay, so we could I'm confident we could fit at least 2 or 3 trees within the IVW. And then another one could go, nearby. Red maple would be, the usual suspect that we propose. They do well, they're commercially available. And we'd be happy to plant 4 of those.
Thanks.
Anything, Fred?
That's all for me.
All right, Peter,
No questions.
Allison,
No additional comments.
Paulina,
No questions.
and I don't have any questions. I would assume that, and this is a question for Deb, maybe that we could specify that in the order of conditions that the location and species of trees be pre-approved by the staff before anything happens. But anyway.
You can condition it. So when I was reviewing this, I noticed that the previous order of conditions is still open. So the commission generally doesn't like to have 2 open permits. So I understand from Rich that they are working on the as-built plan to close out the open permit, which was the drainage efforts between the 2 properties. So, I don't know what the timeline you think that we would be receiving the COC request, Rich. But I would anticipate that we might have them both on the same agenda and close out the open permit and issue the new permit in the same meeting.
Okay, yeah, I think we could accommodate you on that. Rob, forgive me, I don't remember what the email said, but I do believe the surveyor provided an ETA of the as-built plan as early next week, was it?
No, I believe the survey, and this is actually Field Resources that we're working with, and I know that they're on this as well. I believe that it's on the docket to do the actual as-built survey in the very near future. The goal would be to have this for the meeting on the 12th, and in the event that doesn't look realistic for one reason or another, I would request or ask if it would be possible to get a continuation at that point.
Okay, just so we need the information a week before the meeting. So
you need the certificate of compliance request with the as-built plan by October 5th is what you're saying? Okay.
All right.
Well, we'll do our best to make that happen.
okay.
Clay, do you have any comments?
Nope.
Anybody in the public arena?
There are no raised hands.
Okay, so I guess we could close this hearing and then anticipate. No?
No, we're gonna continue it because I think we should continue it until we get the COC information.
Okay. But if all the information comes in time, we could close everything together.
Right. We would close out the existing permit and issue the new permit at the same meeting.
Okay, great. So can I have a motion to continue this hearing to October 12th for 80 Robinwood Avenue, NGWP number 20?
So moved.
Second.
All right, let's vote here. Sue? Sue?
Aye.
Reed?
Aye.
Red?
Aye.
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Allison?
Aye.
Alina?
Aye.
And Chair votes aye. Okay, thank you, and look forward.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
All right, so the next item on the agenda is 94 Elder Road, DEP file 234-913. And see who is here to discuss this.
Hi, Diane from Field Resources. I'm here for the project at 94 Elder. I I know the developer was on. We are here for the typical, the reconstruction of a single-family home within Riverfront area. And I know that's been a revolving regulation for us all to work through with the new oversight. So with that said, can I share my screen?
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's just, let me just get that open. I'm sorry. For some reason it was open. I just can't seem to find it. Here it is. So here you will see the existing conditions. Again, single family home with its amenities. Currently there is a shed, the fence, there's an existing fence, and a patio and such. With that said, we will go on to the BVW. I should say the riverfront is down gradient of Locust property. Basically from the fence area is a steady grade down to the wetlands, which is on west side of the property. So we'll go over to the proposed conditions, if I can get my mouse to work. My computer seems to be glitchy this evening, so I do apologize. So with the existing site, again, we have the improvements with the single family home, with the removal of the closest impervious or structure, the shed in the northwest corner. Additionally, the existing fence will be replaced in the same location. We also will the proximity of the closest structure to the riverfront currently, I believe, is at 64 feet. I'm sorry about that number down, but we're making an improvement, a 12-foot improvement for the closest structure to the riverfront, which shows an improvement to the performance standards within the performance standards. Additionally, we are removing, which again, after a site walk with Deb, I did identify 2 areas that do have patio, which were not shown, which is next to the existing shed that we would like to add to the plan. I know we'll be back to you in regards to this particular project, so we will add that as well for degraded area on site. So the numbers will slightly change. But currently with the inner riparian, we are going to decrease the degraded area by 177 feet, which includes the patio on the existing house, on the back side of the house, and the removal of the shed. Additionally, the outer riparian, we will increase degraded area by 382 square feet. So that would bring us to approximately 205 square feet of increased degraded area within the riverfront area. Again, our performance standards, we are improving the structure setback to the riverfront. Additionally, we're adding the infiltration system, which we have done our soil bits as well, which was included in the packet. And then finally, we do have some mitigation, some restoration, I should say mitigation to the back side of the lot with some plantings which are within, they're in our packet, the write-up. It shows the proposed plantings that we have presented this evening. We do have currently 2 trees that will be removed. With that, we have proposed 2 trees. But again, during the site walk, we did identify the tree in the front that is going to be removed is a nice
Dogwood.
yes, thank you, dogwood. I was thinking magnolia, but it's a dogwood tree that the contractor thought would be nice to save. So when we come back to you next time, we will also put that in as to replace or to relocate that tree. So with that said, we will change the number of trees as well. So with that said, I will turn this project over to the commission and see if there are any comments.
All right, great. Thanks, Diane. I'm going to ask the commissioners for comments. I'm going to work in the reverse from what I've been doing, which was alphabetically. I'm going to go reverse alphabetically. Okay, so Paulina, any comments? Hello?
Sorry, I don't have any comments.
All right, great. Allison?
The only comment I would have is that you can only move dogwoods in the spring.
Oh,
They don't die. They're fall hazards. Just as a information. I mean, you can try, but they have a much greater chance of dying because they have to set out roots to really survive. They're delicate. That's it.
okay. What I'll do is I can speak with the contractor and see if that's something we can hold off to the spring. But thank you for that.
And it needs to be before bud break, as well.
Hey, Peter,
No questions.
Fred,
No questions.
Reed,
Sorry. Yeah, so the U's in the back are those, it was unclear to me, those are being removed or those staying?
They are going to be removed and replaced with that's part of the write-up in the replacement tree plantings.
Okay, so that's what the replace, okay.
Right, to be it's going to create more diverse habitat for that area.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, and as long as, our replacement policy, I guess it was unclear to me. What was how many were being removed, what was being removed back there, but as long as Deb and Claire are okay with it.
So is the replacement policy 2-to-1 for shrubs as well as for trees?
No.
Do we have a guideline for that, Deb?
No, not
Okay.
for shrubs.
Okay.
Okay.
all right, Fred, Reed, Sue.
Yeah, two quick things. So Diane, it's 2 trees being removed and how many trees being planted? I'm sorry, how many trees being planted?
Yep, the 4 red dots are the 4 trees that we would replace with.
Okay, and the
Breaking up, Sue.
I just see 1 being removed in the front. Actually, I just wanted my next thing. I guess it probably goes to Clay or Deb. Is this meeting the DEP regs with the riverfront?
So not yet. So I did discuss this at length with Diane and the applicant. So their existing the existing structure and existing impervious is over the 10% of the riverfront area on the parcel. So any additional impervious area they're proposing, they need to do 2-to-1 mitigation for that. So, I think they're going to be putting together, some type of mitigation planting area, maybe back where the U's are being removed. And they're potentially, I think, also looking for credit for adding infiltration. There isn't presently infiltration on the property, and DEP did mention that commissions could look at that as a potential mitigation. So depending, I guess, on what they come back with for a mitigation planting area, that might be something that they'll be looking for credit for as well.
Yeah, and in the back, and I can just slide over where the existing shed is. Again, that's the area we had, I had mentioned that the shed into the northwest side of the shed, and in front, there's kind of it's lack of topsoil in the sense that somewhat degraded in that it's pavers basically just put down on the ground. So we are going to extend the planting area around here and get again this degraded area into our calculations. Additionally, there's some degraded area over here which is under an A-framed swing. So we will also take that into account. So again, that's where I said we do have after our site meeting, we do have a little bit of work to upgrade the plan for the next meeting.
And if you are able to save that dogwood, then that would be, only one tree that you're removing.
Correct.
So then you would just need the 2 trees.
Correct.
Or, if you want to put the additional trees in the mitigation area, that's, another idea as well.
Thank you. Yes.
Hey,
Okay.
Clay, do you have any comments or?
Nope, this one was under Deb's purview.
Okay, great. And is there anybody in the public audience that has their hand raised?
There are no hands raised.
Okay, so let's have a motion to continue this hearing for 94 Elder Road, DEP file 234-913 to the next meeting.
Motion to continue.
A second.
Okay. So, Polina,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Polina, Allison,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Fred,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Sue,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. All right, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Again, thank you for your time. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
All right, so we got one more item on the agenda. 12 Glover Road, DEP file 234-9XX. Who is here to represent the applicant?
Hi, my name is Susan MacArthur from MacArthur Environmental Consulting. And also on the call are the applicants Selena and Nathaniel Jabaway.
There.
Hi.
Hi, the agenda, actually, it should say 17 Glover. Yeah, that was a mistake. May I share my screen? Okay, can you see that plan?
Yep.
Okay. So this notice of intent is being filed for the construction of a deck and an addition to the rear of the existing house, which lies within the 200-foot riverfront area and the 100-foot buffer zone. This is the river in the back, which wasn't delineated. The BVW was delineated. This is a large marsh system, so it was inaccessible to get out here. But this is the, and within the 50-foot, I should add, 50-foot buffer zone, the locally regulated. So the lot is approximately 12,800 square feet. And it contains a 2-story single-family home, an attached garage, and a raised back deck, paved driveway, and a front walkway, impervious front walkway, and a landscape lawn. And as I said, Rosemary Brook is located in the back within a large marsh system. The 200-foot riverfront area encompasses the entire lot. So this is the 200-foot riverfront right there. The wetland at the rear of the property was delineated back in March. Consists of silky dogwood, red maple, glossy buckthorn, multiflora rose. And so the proposed project consists of removing the existing deck, which is located here, and constructing the new addition, and which will be approximately 210 square feet, and a new 240 square foot deck. The addition will sit on piers, like helical piles, and the deck will be raised, so it'll be on sonotubes. And so as I said, the work is within the riverfront area, and as we have heard and the past few hearings, you know, DEP is kind of cracking down on the riverfront area regs, and so I can go through that in a minute. Some of the steps we've taken for mitigation. No trees are proposed to be removed as a result of this project. The clean rooftop runoff will be through gutters and piped to a rain catchment, like a kind of like a rain barrel, which will be used to water the plants in the back. So the riverfront area, it is considered a redevelopment project located within previously disturbed areas. As I said, the existing lot is 12,800 square feet. Of that, approximately 2,467 square feet is degraded, which means it contains the house, the front walkway, the driveway, basically impervious areas. So this equates to 19.3% of the lot. So, you know, existing already exceeds the 10% standard in the riverfront area standards. So the new addition will be 236 square feet, and that equates to a 1.79% increase in the degraded area on the lot. This puts us at about 11.9% over the performance standards of the 10%. So therefore, the applicant is proposing to create 2 naturalized areas, one on the side of the house here, approximately 500 square feet in this area, and then the one in the back adjacent to the BBW, 945 square feet. And these areas essentially will be the lawn. It is lawn right now. The lawn will be removed, and they'll loam and seed it and plant a wildflower seed mixture there. And then they won't mow it except maybe once a year in the fall, just to keep out the woody, keep anything from woody from vegetating in here. And then also they're proposing 4 arborvitae along the side of the property there. And let's see, I think that is it. If anybody has any questions.
All right, let's go to the commissioners for questions here. And I'll start with Paulina.
I don't have any questions.
Allison,
No questions.
Peter,
No questions.
Fred,
I think I'm interested in the rain barrel plan. My experience is you would need some overflow system, because if you had a very heavy rain, or if you're not draining the barrel fast enough with watering, you're going to overflow it. And so I guess I was wondering if that's a concern anyone else has.
all right. Reed, do you have any comments?
So the naturalized area, especially the one within the buffer zone, so that would be a native seed mix.
Yeah, a native wildflower seed mix.
Yeah. Okay, that's it. Yeah.
And Sue, no questions? Okay, I just have.
No questions. Sorry.
I have just one question on the, I guess it's the west side, or looking at the plan on the left side, that naturalized area.
Yep.
Is anything going to be done to keep that area from being unnaturalized? I mean, typically you'd see, people going back and forth on the side of the house.
Oh, I mean, they may need to, well, I guess I'll let them join in, Nathaniel or.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. We haven't really thought it completely through, but I'm thinking maybe some small pavers to get through the fence in and out, probably would be the best solution for that.
If you don't mind, I actually have a staff comment pertaining to this section.
Yeah, okay, so why don't we just go to the staff comments?
Yeah, so first, this looked definitely good with the riverfront standards and DEP's comments that we've had as a whole on projects like this. I think I was concerned about the this planting area alongside the house. However, I think the way that the calculations were done for this were more robust than they needed to be. I believe Susan, and I apologize, I didn't get these comments to you ahead of the meeting, but I think that the mitigation area provided here on this plan was for all square footage 2-to-1 over the 10%. But for the redevelopment, my understanding that the way that DEP has been enforcing it and providing comments to us, it just has to be 2-to-1 for the additional impervious surface increase during the project after you're over 10%. So in this case, I think I don't see it on the shared screen, but on my other screen here, it looks like you have it listed as 236 square feet of additional impervious surface. I think that the back area, the naturalization, that 945 square feet suffices for that riverfront standard for mitigation. And part of the reason why I bring up that side area is the other recommendation both made stated in the regulations as well as re-emphasized by DEP is that there should be some kind of permanent signage. I know that the commission usually requires those wetland placards to prevent long-term mowing. I think that that's harder to do alongside the house, but certainly that restoration area along that back fence, it would be easy for us to condition, the placement of 2 or 3 of those kind of wetland bounds back there just as a permanent marker that's referenced on that order of conditions. So if the commission is amenable to it, I think that we could even omit the seeding being done on the side of the house, just because I don't think long term, if the homeowners move away, I don't think that it'll be maintained that way, the same way that the seeding in the back along that fence line with the bounds would be.
Yeah, those are some good points, Clay. Any other?
I just had one comment. DEP had pointed out to us previously, and Clay may have added it to recent orders. But they would like a permanent condition on the COC that prohibits further alteration within the restoration or mitigation area, except as may be required to maintain the area in its restored or mitigated condition. So that will be an ongoing condition on all the permits going forward in riverfront area.
Okay. So we ready to close this out?
I just want to add, we didn't get a DEP file number. My bad. I didn't calculate the fact that we're in riverfront. So I have since sent a check for the additional $27.50 to both the Conservation Commission as well as the DEP, but until they process it, they're not going to issue. So I apologize about that.
All right, so I guess we'll continue this to the next meeting. All right, so
I have a motion for continuing.
okay, for 17 Glover Road, DEP file unknown at this time. We have a second.
A second.
All right, let's vote here. Paulina,
Aye.
Allison,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Fred,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
and Sue.
Aye.
Okay,
Great, thank you.
yeah, thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
All right, that completes our listed agenda. I don't know if there was any other issues anybody wanted to bring up.
So since we've been having a lot of these riverfront area projects lately, I did reach out to Alicia Gallen from DEP to see if she'd be willing to come do a presentation to the commission at one of their meetings. She has a slideshow, you know, that kind of, you know, helps, I think, understanding what we're dealing with. And at the same time, you know, if we had some of the consultants that come through a lot also attend, so that everyone's kind of on the same page of how we're calculating things and what the mitigation is that's required. So I'm pretty sure she'll be willing to do that, but I'll let you know, and hopefully we can get that on an agenda.
Yeah, it
Good
sounds
idea.
good. Seems like the rules change every time we talk about them.
I'm finding that it depends also, you know, different, what's the word I'm looking for? So Northeast looks at it one way, Southeast looks at it another way. So just even within DEP, it seems as though it's, you know, kind of up to whoever's deciphering it.
Right.
But since we're in Northeast, and that's who's going to be reviewing our permits, that's what we're going with.
Okay,
And also just bringing up the MACC conference is coming up next month. So if anyone's interested, let Elisa know. I mentioned we pay for the conference, but if you did want to do the fundamentals, that's kind of on you. But give it some thought. It's in person.
all right. I have just one question about the tree guidance update. Where are we on that? Are we ready to finalize that?
I think what we need to have some further discussion at the next meeting. Clay, do you remember what we were talking about the other day? That we said that should be part of our tree guidance. I can see the smoke coming out of your head.
I know what you're talking about. I just
Too late today.
Yeah.
I'm burnt out today.
Yeah,
Just
we're
put it
very
on the
burnt out.
agenda.
But so I had a few comments that I'll try to circulate, and between Clay and my brain, we'll try to remember what we thought was something important to add to it. Oh,
I
wait.
thought we wanted Allison's input on the.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. You're right. Yeah, so Allison, we were gonna have you look it over, and specifically since we have the proposed replacements as part of it, that maybe you could take a look at that list again and see if there's anything we want to add or anything we want to remove from it.
Could I respectfully ask you to email it to me, Clay?
Yes, you can. And I will remember to do that. So I will do that. And Clay, wait a minute, it's like it's on the tip of my cranium. It was, oh, hazard trees? Is that what it was? Was it hazard trees and whether we require replacement?
I think what my concern was similar to what the discussion was with Ivy Road. I ran into another person who was not ready to remove a tree, was not at this time requesting to remove a tree, but he knows that there's a very large spruce tree that sits atop a high point kind of in his backyard is an extreme slope and it sits at the high point. Currently it's healthy. He's not looking to remove it, but he is looking to increase the plantings in the backyard area. He does not have a lot of lawn. It's a loosely landscaped kind of oasis for him. But the discussion we were having was if he wanted to remove it in the future, if it becomes declined, in the next 10 years, if he's already taken up all the space around the house with planting of new trees and he has no lawn to give up, how does he go about, removing that one tree short of digging up the roots and replanting something in its footprint? Just the ability to either have credits or some kind of comprehensive way to address almost a preemptive replanting of other trees. If he can plant now, he said he won't pursue those other trees and the other planting in his backyard if it turns out that he won't be able to remove this tree should it become a hazard. I think that discussion was based on extremes and hypotheticals as well. I don't think he would be refusing somebody to remove an imminent danger over their house, but I think just having some kind of provision or comprehensive strategy for when you've kind of saturated a property with plantings where there's no other lawn to give up, or again, planting something and getting it established, knowing that you're going to have to remove another tree in the future, almost kind of that preemptive replacement before the tree's removed.
I think that's a complicated but important thing to think about. However, I want to ask in sort of ignorance, theoretical legal ignorance, that if you require, this is a worry that I had, if you require that a homeowner or whoever has to replace true hazard trees, that they have to pay for that. In addition to taking them down, they have to do new ones. Is there's kind of a compulsory aspect of that might be considered, iffy legally? I know maybe I'm just being a little paranoid, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so Clay, I don't know if that's the same person that, emailed you that, he kind of said, well, according to your guidelines, I don't have to replace it. So that's kind of what I was talking about.
Right.
I'm talking about a more broad, is this question ever come up that if, in another town, if you require, if there's a giant pine 5 feet away from your house and it's over mature and it's, all the giant things are hanging over you and they have shallow root system, and then you require that they plant 2 trees because they have to replace it because it's dangerous. There's something there that feels wrong to me, not environmentally or, habitat wise. I'm talking about private property.
Yeah.
And, compelling.
And the issue is very simply, should our tree policy cover dead or hazard trees?
Yeah.
And I think I'm pretty sure that it does, it's currently written, it doesn't require replacement of dead or hazard trees, but I know when Janet and I were, making some revisions to it, I think we added that in, but we can take that out. I don't think.
I'm not saying take it out, I'm just saying, ask a question maybe of if there is such a question, if it is a question of legal, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, we're just trying to get as many trees as possible.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I just don't want the commission to get in trouble because we're having.
I think we usually try to get them to leave a snag if possible to keep some wildlife habitat so that it's not a danger anymore, but still provides habitat. So I think if it's within a forested area or a natural area, usually we can get them to do that. If it's like in the middle of a lawn or something, then we'll try to encourage them to plant a replacement tree. But I think that we word it in a way so that's not required if it's a hazard.
Yeah.
But to
So-
keep wildlife habitat.
Allison, could you take a look at the current draft and, provide some,
Yeah, I mean, I think I need to do a little research, about has this ever been brought up in a lawsuit? In other towns, with a good legal argument that the town cannot compel you to pay for something that could be, a hazard, like have a punishment of something that could kill you. It just, there seems to be, I don't know. I mean, I'm just trying to take it from the other point of view, and I don't want to.
I would turn it around and say like the case on, what was it? The road by the river where somebody was taking out like 20 or 25 white pines that were, it's almost like you could call any tree a hazard tree.
Well, that's another issue. That's another issue.
Because
I'll
these
talk about that
arborists, yeah, I mean, they'll go around and do what.
No, I know, but that's another issue. That's another issue.
So anyway, I mean, my interest is just get this thing moving and come up with a draft that we're all in agreement with. So
Another thing that has crossed my mind on the draft, do we want to put with the shrubs, a size requirement? There's no size requirement on the shrub replacement. Do we want a size requirement on shrubs? I don't know.
I mean, I've seen that in other towns. Only thing I could say now is that we've been, working on this draft since January, and we talk about it every once in a while. I would like everybody to reread it and put your comments down so that we can have our set of comments and create a draft that incorporates everybody's comments.
I did say shrub size requirement, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So I would ask everybody to put your comments in writing, and so that we could look at it all together.
And maybe we could meet in person for this particular.
Sue, you're so funny.
It might go a lot quicker.
All right.
I would just like to also add that I think it's entirely reasonable to, if there's concerns about liabilities in the final revision, I think it's reasonable to run that final revision by town council before being formally adopted as well.
Yeah.
So there's nothing else. Let's have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
A second.
Okay, let's vote. Sue,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Fred,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Allison,
Hi.
Alina,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. All right, thanks, everybody.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you. See you later.
Night.